Magic Tricks: How to Become a Magician, Easy Steps. Written by Jason Strendham, narrated by John York. 7 Magic Trick Tips Using Invisible Thread. Have you ever been to a magic show, sitting there mesmerized as you asked yourself, how did they do that? As you know, magic is more an illusion, creating the vision that something is happening although it is not. While magicians use many different tools of the trade, one of the most popular is the invisible thread. Trying to get magicians to divulge their secrets associated with the invisible thread is near impossible. However, we do want to provide you with some highlights and tips about the top 7 magic trick tips performed using invisible thread. What is invisible thread? The first of the 7 magic trick tips using invisible thread is to understand what it is. This type of thread is actually a very fine strand of nylon used primarily for getting small objects to levitate. For years, magicians worked with invisible thread and their hands only, meaning they had to be very precise in their movements for the magic tricks to appear flawless. Today, magicians can use an invisible thread reel, which not only dispenses the thread, but it is also designed to retract it. Because of this, the magician is able to maintain a constant tension on the line, so there are no mishaps in the performance. Invisible thread reel size. The second tip when using a thread reel is to use the appropriate size. Since different objects need different types of control, thread reels are made in a number of different sizes. Typically, the longer the tube, the more distance you will get from the reel, while the more tension, the less distance. For magicians, the idea is to use the smaller size invisible thread reels for close-up work, opposed to a larger reel for distance. As far as size, a stage reel is capable of extending 35 feet, which means a magician could easily perform a floating bill trick in the center of a room with no nearby walls. However, if you want to really impress a crowd, you could perform the same floating bill trick outdoors, simply by anchoring the reel to the ground. With this, it would appear the trick was impossible, and the crowd cheers. What about tension? Third on the list of 7 trick tips using invisible thread is using the right tension. As you pull the invisible thread out of the reel, there will be an increase in tension. What happens at some point is that the pull will become too much for the thread, causing it to break. If you want to put more tension on the thread reel, wind more of the invisible thread into a wax ball. What you do not want to do is add additional winds on the elastic, which would only make it cumbersome. Floating objects. Next on the list is insights into working with floating objects. When using invisible thread for a magic trick, keep in mind that you want something that is light enough not to sag by putting too much weight on the thread. The key is to choose objects that you can easily move and maintain in a position in space, which is why the floating bill is such a popular choice. Other choices to use an invisible thread magic trick include ring fingers, an empty soda can, etc. The greatest benefit of using a thread reel is that when you walk away from your floating object, you are actually transferring energy to the reel, which can then be used to make the bill float from the floor to your hand magically. Those lights. Next, to use invisible thread, you have to know how to use correct lighting. If you are a magician or just practicing to be one and you want to perform tricks with the invisible thread, remember that lighting is crucial. The 2 main factors to consider when using the thread reel are light source and clothing. Typically, the best conditions for a magic trick with invisible thread are cloudy days and the worst direct lighting that comes from behind you. With this, the light will only reflect off the thread, thus being seen by the audience. For clothing, anything dark will serve as a backdrop for the thread, thus making it easier to see. For this reason, you should go with lighter, non-reflective type clothing. Magic is always fun, and with some practice, you will soon learn a number of magic tricks with invisible thread, perfect for entertaining family and friends. Methodology. The 6th of the 7 magic trick tips using invisible thread has to do with methods of performing the tricks, such as the hoop pass. This is actually considered one of the greatest tricks you can do with the invisible thread reel, which involves passing a solid hoop over a bill. The key is to use a ring with relatively thick stock, which will put less strain on the thread as it goes over the metal hoop. Lay the hoop on the thread so it is between you and the floating bill. Then, with your hand, scoop the ring through so the thread is now on the back of the left hand. Next, use the right hand to pass the hoop over the bill. To complete the trick, all you do is let the thread slide off from the back of your hand. Remember, this is just one of many methods used with the invisible thread, so have fun practicing them all. Finishing the show. The final tip is that whatever trick being performed using invisible thread and/or a reel, it should never kill the effect. In other words, you want to keep your audience wanting more. If you carry a trick on too far, you will lose the interest of the audience, so it would be far better to keep the tricks short and sweet. In addition, put some meaning and emphasis in your performances to leave your audience with a memory of your magic ability. We recommend you use the invisible thread late in your show, which will end the performance on a fun note. 10 reasons to start learning magic tricks. Have you ever watched a magician performing and thought about getting started with learning magic tricks yourself? Here we'll look at 10 good reasons why you should act on that thought and start learning to perform magic tricks. 1. Entertain family and friends. If you know a few good magic tricks, you can have some real fun performing them in front of family and friends. It definitely adds something different to an event and creates a real talking point. Also, many magic tricks can be performed with items you can find almost anywhere, like cards, coins, and table napkins, so it needn't require a whole load of equipment. That means it can be easy to improvise a quick magic performance in many different social situations. 2. Put on a show for kids. Kids love magic tricks, and being able to perform some magic at kids' parties is a really good skill to have. Parents are always looking for ways to entertain their kids at birthday parties, so being able to mention that you can do a few magic tricks might lead to you getting involved in a performance. Keep it simple and involve lots of humor and audience participation, and it'll go down a treat. 3. Break the ice at parties and meetings. Doing a few quick magic tricks can be a great way of breaking the ice at a party or meeting. It gets people talking, and they'll be interested in finding out about your magical skills. A good place to start with this is with table magic. After a good meal, people are relaxed, and doing some magic tricks with coins or tableware can create a real buzz. 4. Find enjoyment with a new hobby. These days, it's very easy to get submerged in the routines of daily life, so it's good and healthy to have some other interests. Learning magic tricks doesn't have to take up a lot of time at first, but it can be a good way of relaxing. There are plenty of tricks and skills to learn, so there will never be any shortage of material to get stuck into. 5. Enjoy people asking, "How did you do that?" and enjoy not telling them. There's something really satisfying about performing a trick to an audience, then afterward having someone ask you how you did it. Many tricks often have a very simple secret, but to members of the audience unaware of this, it can often seem quite baffling, which is obviously why people are drawn to someone performing a magic trick. It's most important, though, not to let on how the trick was done. It's best to create the illusion that you can really perform magical acts and leave them scratching their heads. 6. Build self-confidence and presentation skills. As you practice and rehearse a particular trick, you first learn the mechanics of performing a trick, i.e., the secret behind it. Perhaps even more important than the how-to, though, is the presentation and patter that you go through when performing in front of an audience. That can really help build your self-confidence and presentation skills in front of people generally, which can be useful in other situations. 7. Develop your creativity. Modify tricks and make them your own. If you take one magic trick and ask 100 magicians to perform it, you'll get 100 unique performances. Even though the elements of the trick are the same, each one will put their own special spin on it to make it their own. You can really have fun with this, taking an existing trick and figuring out how to tweak and change it so that it becomes something completely your own, even a totally new trick. 8. Add a unique aspect to a presentation or speech. Have you ever sat through a boring presentation or speech? Probably quite a few. If you're giving a presentation or speech, working a magic trick or two into it can be a good way to get people's attention, so they're more likely to listen to the rest of your talk. You can even do this in a way that illustrates the topic of your speech by a careful choice of trick. 9. Have a hobby which can earn you extra money. If you persevere with learning and performing magic tricks, you may well get to the point where you can earn some money for your performances, say for kids' parties or local corporate events. Organizers of company dinners often arrange for magicians to entertain their guests by performing magic tricks at tables. Or your local restaurant might be interested in someone who can entertain their diners. Once you have some solid trick performances under your belt, there are plenty of ways to earn extra money by performing. 10. Carry on a rich tradition of performing magic that's centuries old. Magic has been performed in front of audiences for thousands of years, and there is a rich history of great magicians who have amazed people in the past. Even when doing simple magic tricks yourself, it's good to know that you're carrying on this tradition and are following in the footsteps of those famous magicians from yesterday. Studying the history of magic is also useful for learning about different tricks and performance styles. Attract women with magic tricks. Performing magic involves tons of audience interaction. What if you could use that to your advantage and effortlessly impress and attract women by simply performing magic? The bottom line is this: women love magic. Ask 100 women if they want to see a magic trick, and I guarantee at least 95 say yes. The other 5 are probably boring and you wouldn't want to get to know them anyway. Consider this. If you approach a woman and blurt out a corny pickup line, it's obvious that you are hitting on her and she will immediately shut herself off to you. However, when you approach her with absolute confidence and ask to show her something amazing, her sense of curiosity is aroused and she is immediately intrigued. This guide provides some advice and tips that may seem unconventional. However, if you are willing to try it, you will have a simple and powerful tool for picking up women. The number one mistake men make when trying to attract women is this: they simply don't take action. If you really want to succeed, you go out and try these methods. Have fun. Who cares if you're a bit shaky at first and your ego shatters a bit? It's a fascinating learning process, a fun game. There are 4 main points to my method. 1. Find. 2. Meet. 3. Attract. 4. Close. Now, let's begin. Step 1. Find. My favourite place to find women is at the local shopping mall. Not surprising at all, right? Women love to shop, so where else would they flock? Traditionally, picking up girls is done at bars and clubs, so it never occurs to guys that the mall is a great place to meet women. Night spots are great places too. The girls who go there might even want to be picked up. If you love the nightlife, this is the best place for you to meet women. Step 2. Meet. Begin with a hello. Never, and I repeat, never, open with a pickup line you found on the internet. At malls, if you spot a girl resting or waiting, walk up and talk to her. Most likely, she is taking a break from shopping or waiting for her friends and would enjoy seeing some magic. Start with something along the lines of, "Hey, I saw you from over there and thought I'd show you something cool." You can tell her that you're a magician, but personally, I don't, since it makes me seem more mysterious. Ask for her name and tell her yours. And now you're ready for the third step, attract. Step 3. Attract. Here, you want to go into your magic routine. It is important to perform the appropriate magic tricks. You want tricks that will appear to her personally. Mental magic works great, since it gives a sense of emotional connection between you two. A great trick to perform is Stigmata by Wayne Hoochin. The trick is extremely personal and gets incredible reactions. Another effect I like is the Revolution coin vanish. I make her ring vanish and tell her that she has to search me to get it back. Just be sure to avoid shock magic tricks such as disjointed, saw, or needle through arm. These are great tricks, but not ones you want to attract women with. While performing your magic, you want to come off as an attractive person. Convey your personality through your magic. Convince her that you are funny, deep, intellectual, and adventurous. Speak clearly and project your voice. However, don't talk too quiet or too loud, and keep a relaxed posture. As you perform and converse, be sure to touch her in a playful and natural manner. If you cannot do this, then you can forget this whole thing. Touching, also known as kino, short for kinesinetic, is one of the most important aspects in attracting women. Kino helps develop a physical connection between you and her and proves that you are a sexual being, meaning that you're boyfriend material. When you're done performing, start some conversation. Ask basic questions and get to know her a bit more while introducing yourself. Then, say that you enjoyed meeting her but have to leave. This sets the impression that you're a sociable and busy person, not some loser who hangs around the mall all day doing magic tricks. Make sure you tell her that you have to go, not the other way around. Step 4. Close. Closing is getting further contact with her. Get her phone number, also her email or screen name if you want. Ask if she would like to see some more magic. If you played your cards right, she will most certainly say yes, and set up a small meet-up right then. Tell her that you're free next Thursday, and that it would be nice to meet up and have a quick bite. Easy to learn magic tricks for aspiring magicians. Why would you like to learn how to perform magic tricks? What are the benefits of being a clever magician who can mesmerize their friends and family with card tricks and simple coin tricks, or masterful acts of illusion? How difficult is it to learn magic? What is the best way to learn magic tricks? What are the easiest tricks to learn for people just starting out in learning magic tricks? Keep listening to have these questions answered. Magic tricks or shows are loved by everyone, but very few actually try to learn how to do and perform them. To learn magic is actually quite easy, but you do need to practice and enjoy being an entertainer. Magic is fun and entertaining, whether you are the magician or whether you are watching it being carried out. Magic tricks are nothing but illusions. whether they are card tricks, coin tricks, or other sleight-of-hand illusions, which make the trick seem unbelievable. Magic in general derives its power from keeping hidden its secrets and by confusing and deceiving the audience with the dexterity of sleight-of-hand movements. The more your audience is confused and amazed, the harder it is for them to work out what is going on. And the more they are amazed and confused and can't work out what you are doing, the more entertaining your whole act will become. Magic is a performance art that intends to amaze and astonish people with thinking they are seeing things that they find unbelievable. Now that you are dedicated to learn how to do magic tricks, let's choose which types of trickery, deception, and magic you find the most appealing. Taking up study of illusion and magic is very rewarding, especially when you start to unearth all the secrets and hidden arts of the expert magician. From simple card tricks to rabbits popping out of hats, glamorous assistants disappearing, and a whole host of other illusions, performing magic tricks is and will always be a fantastic experience. Of course, there are many different paths to learning magic. Which is the best way for you? You can study from books, audios, and even find DVD instructions. Maybe even try copying all those YouTube videos. You can just get going to a magic shop and buy some props to practice with. Actually pick up some magic tricks and begin to practice, I believe, is the best way to start. If you want to become a magician and learn magic tricks step by step, there are a couple of options you can consider. The best part is, if you were wondering how to learn magician's tricks at home, card tricks and coin tricks are the easiest to learn. Card tricks and tricks using cards is the backbone and starting point, as it is one of the easiest magic tricks to master. Used by magicians in magic shows throughout the world and throughout time, Magic for Beginners courses always start with some simple and easy card tricks. Magical card tricks is a popular form of entertainment that is the opening act of most magic performances. From childhood, nearly everyone knows a little about a pack of cards, so there is familiarity plus amazement. We know how difficult it is to find the card you want, let alone to pick out one specific card blindfolded after the pack has been shuffled. Card tricks with magic is a tricky skill and must be performed by cleverly adapting both sleight of hand and illusion, plus a few simple tricks that the audience is not aware of, otherwise the trick could be disclosed to the audience and then the magic element is lost. Magic tricks that utilize coins, sometimes referred to as coin magic or coin tricks, which are the terms used to describe magical performances employing one or more coins. In these tricks, the coins are manipulated in a way the audience cannot follow or understand how you have outwitted them. Coin magic requires hand coordination skills, dexterity, and graceful movements to perform convincingly, and this takes a lot of practice to acquire. Coin tricks are a very popular part of any magic show. Doing magic tricks like the disappearing coin may be just a fun way to entertain your friends, but people who get into real sorcery do it to gain control over more gullible people, to influence them to do something they wouldn't do otherwise, or to get knowledge that may not be possible without making the other person complacent to give up information they normally wouldn't. Some practitioners try to convince others they have dark magical powers by demonstrating mastery over coins. We are all fascinated by power over money, aren't we? Once you start practicing to learn magic tricks, you will soon become so enthused you will continue to practice and perfect your newfound art form. Now, once you know how to perform these magical tricks, go ahead to find an audience and cast them under your spell. Magic is logical to the practitioner and mystical to the audience. That is the magic. It's an optical illusion that captivates the spectators. Go ahead and have some fun. History of magicians. Magic, also known as prestidigitation and conjuring, is the art of entertaining an audience by performing illusions that entertain, baffle, and amaze, often by giving the impression that something impossible has been achieved. Yet, this illusion of magic is created entirely by natural means. The practitioners of this mystery art may be called magicians, table magicians, close-up magicians, conjurers, illusionists, and prestidigitators. Arts in other media, such as theatre, cinema, dance, and the visual arts, increasingly work using similar means, but regard their magical techniques as of secondary importance to the goal of creating a complex cultural performance. Magicians. Performances we would recognize as conjuring have probably been practiced throughout history. The same ingenuity behind ancient deceptions such as the Trojan horse would have been used for entertainment, or at least for cheating in gambling games, since time immemorial. However, the respectable profession of the illusionist gained strength during the 18th century and has enjoyed several popular vogues. Modern entertainment magic owes much of its origins to Jean Eugene Robert Houdin, 1805 to 1871, originally a clockmaker who opened a magic theatre in Paris in the 1840s. His speciality was the construction of mechanical automata which appeared to move and act as if they were alive. The British performer J.N. Maskelyne and his partner Cook established their own theatre, the Egyptian Hall in London's Piccadilly in 1873. They presented stage magic exploiting the potential of the stage for hidden mechanisms and assistance, and the control it offers over the audience's point of view. The greatest celebrity magician of the 19th century, Harry Houdini, real name Eric Weiss, 1874 to 1926, took his stage name from Robert Houdin and developed a range of stage magic tricks, many of them based on escapology, though that word was not used until after Houdini's death. The son of a Hungarian rabbi, Houdini was genuinely highly skilled in techniques such as lockpicking and escaping straitjackets, but also made full use of the whole range of conjuring techniques. Houdini's show, Business Savvy, was as great as his performing skill. In addition to expanding the range of magic hardware, showmanship, and deceptive technique, these performers established the modern relationship between the performer and the audience. In this relationship, there is an unspoken agreement between the magicians and the audience about what is going on. Unlike in the past, almost no performers today actually claim to possess supernatural powers. It is understood by everyone that the effects in the performance are accomplished through sleight of hand, also called legerdemain, misdirection, deception, collusion with a member of the audience, apparatus with secret mechanisms, mirrors, and other trickery. Hence the illusions are commonly referred to as tricks. The performer seeks to present an effect so clever and skillful that the audience cannot believe their eyes and cannot think of the explanation. The sense of bafflement is part of the entertainment. In turn, the audience play a role in which they agree to be entertained by something they know to be a deception. This is one of the few situations in which people willingly allow themselves to be lied to, and the audience trusts the performer not to exploit this. For example, by cheating them out of money. Houdini strengthened this trust by using his knowledge of illusions to debunk charlatans, a tradition continued by magicians such as James Randi, P.C. Sorcar, and Penn and Teller. In 2006, the art is enjoying a vogue driven by a number of highly successful performers that specialize as either stage, TV, or close-up magicians. The mid-20th century saw magic transform in different aspects. Some performers prefer to renovate the craft on stage, such as the Metalized show in Times Square, which dared to combine spirituality and the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah with the art of magic. Others successfully made the transition to TV, which opens up new opportunities for deceptions. A widely accepted code has developed, in which TV magicians can use all the traditional forms of deception but should not resort to camera tricks, editing the videotape, or other TV special effects. This makes deception too easy in the popular mind. Most TV magicians are shown performing before a live audience, who provide the remote viewer with a reassurance that the effect is not obtained by camera tricks. Categories of illusions. Although there is much discussion among magicians as to how an effect is to be categorized, and in fact disagreements as to what categories actually exist. For instance, some magicians consider penetrations to be a separate category. Others consider penetrations a form of restoration. It is generally agreed that there are very few different types of illusions. Perhaps because it is considered a magic number, it has often been said that there are only 7 types of illusion. Production. The magician pulls a rabbit from an empty hat, a fan of cards from thin air, a shower of coins from an empty bucket, or appears in a puff of smoke on an empty stage. All of these effects are productions. The magician produces something from nothing. Vanish. The magician snaps their fingers and a coin disappears, places a dove in a cage and the bird vanishes, puts a silk into his fist and opens his hands, revealing nothing, or waves a magic wand and the Statue of Liberty has magically gone. A vanish, being the reverse of a production, sometimes uses a similar technique in reverse. Transformation. The magician has a volunteer pick a card from a deck and with a flourish shows the wrong card. Then the magician magically changes the card to the correct card chosen. Or a dog is placed in a cage. The cage is covered with a cloth, which is immediately whisked from the cage, and the dog has become a tiger. A bowl of fire may become a dove. Transformations change one thing into another, or into several others. Restoration. The cut and restored rope is a restoration. A rope is cut into 2 pieces. The 2 pieces are tied together. The knot vanishes, leaving one piece of rope. A newspaper is torn to bits. The magician rubs the pieces together and the newspaper becomes whole. A woman is sawn into 2 separate parts, an apparent hemicorporectomy, and then magically rejoined. A card is torn in fourths and then restored piece by piece to a normal state. Restorations put something back into the state it once was. Teleportation. A teleportation transfers an object from one place to another. Something is vanished, then later found inside a tightly bound bag, which is inside a box that is tied shut, inside another box, which is in a locked box, all of which were across the stage. The magician locks their assistant in a cage, then locks themselves in another. Both cages are uncovered and the pair have magically exchanged places. This is a transposition, a simultaneous double teleportation. The magician climbs on a motorcycle, rides into a crate, the crate is hoisted in the air, the motorcycle instantly appears, engine roaring in the middle of the audience, 80 feet away, with the magician astride it. In a teleportation, something magically moves from one place to the other. Levitation. The magician puts his assistant into a trance, and then floats her up into the air, passing a ring around her body to show that there are no wires supporting her. A close-up magician folds up a borrowed note and then floats it in the air. A playing card hovers over a deck of cards. A silk scarf dances in a sealed bottle. The levitations are illusions where the conjurer magically raises something, possibly including the magician him or herself, into the air. Penetration. In which one solid object passes through another. The magician links 2 solid steel rings, or the cup and balls trick in which the foam balls pass through the cup are penetration illusions. Secrecy. The purpose of a magic trick is to entertain, amuse, and create a feeling of wonder. The audience is generally aware that the magic is performed using trickery and derives enjoyment from the magician's skill. Usually, magicians will refuse to reveal their methods to the audience. The reasons for these include: exposure is claimed to kill magic as an art form and transforms it into mere intellectual puzzles and riddles. It is argued that once the secret of a trick is revealed to a person, he or she can no longer fully enjoy subsequent performances of the trick, as the amazement is missing. Some magicians have taken the controversial position that revealing the methods used in certain tricks can enhance the appreciation of the audience for how clever the trick is. Some frequently perform tricks using transparent props to reveal how it is done, although they almost always include additional unexplained tricks at the end that are made even more astonishing by the revealing props being used. Often what seems to be a revelation of a magical secret is merely another form of misdirection. For instance, a magician may explain to an audience member that the linking rings have a hole in them, and hand the volunteer two unlinked rings, which the volunteer finds to have become linked as soon as he handles them. At this point, the magician may make a gesture at the open space in the center of the ring as he jokingly says, "There's the hole in the center." Types of magic performance. Magic performances fall into three broad genres. Close-up magic. Close-up magic, also known as table magic or close-up table magic, is performed with the audience close to the magician, possibly in physical contact. Close-up magicians usually make use of everyday items as props, such as cards and coins. Close-up magic is a form of magical entertainment that happens right in front of you. Magic you can not only see, but feel and touch. This intimacy is what makes it so different from other types of magic, and it is this that has probably made it the most popular type of magic performed today. An expert close-up magician will involve and interact with the audience far more than a stage or platform magician. Platform magic. Platform magic, in which the magician stands while performing and is seen by more people simultaneously than the close-up performer. Stage magic. Stage magic, which is performed for large audiences, typically within an auditorium. This type of magic is distinguished by elaborate, large-scale props. Other specialities or niches have been created. Bizarre magic, which uses metaphysical, horror, fantasy, and other similar themes in performance. Bizarre magic is typically performed in a close-up venue, although some performers have effectively presented it in a stage setting. Mentalism, which creates the impression in the minds of the audience that the performer possesses special powers to read thoughts, predict events, control other minds. Shock magic is a genre of magic that shocks the audience, hence the name. Sometimes referred to as geek magic, it takes its roots from circus sideshows, in which freakish performances were shown to audiences. Common shock magic or geek magic effects include knife through arm and pen through tongue. Techniques. Close-up magic relies mostly on sleight of hand, in which skillful manipulation of cards, coins, and other props enables an effect to be created. For example, the appearance that an item has vanished, or been produced, can be achieved by a sleight. There is a wide range of sleights for vanishing, producing, and switching items. Sleights require a good deal of practice to perform convincingly, and so many beginners are attracted to close-up tricks based on hardwire gimmicks. However, most shop-bought gimmicks are usually obvious to the audience for what they are, even if the exact mechanism is not understood. Some professional magicians do use hardwire gimmicks, but tend to base their acts on skill with sleight of hand as the main foundation. Some magicians see gimmicks and sleight of hand as a means to an end, and use a combination of both. One principle that underlies virtually all magic tricks is misdirection, which is the act of drawing the audience's attention to one location, while in another location, the magician performs a crucial manipulation undetected. An experienced performer can force the audience to look, however briefly, in a certain direction and use this as cover for what the other hand is doing. This is the basic idea of misdirection, although it can become very sophisticated and subtle for an advanced magician. These are based on the natural instincts of a human being, relating to psychology. Introduction. Magic tricks. Impressing friends and family. Learning a magic trick does not have to be difficult. Although you typically see some of the finest magicians and illusionists performing incredible feats, you too can impress family and friends with basic tricks. You might not expect to perform on the same level as David Blaine or David Copperfield, but with commitment and the right resources, you can do some amazing things. The great thing about magic is that even some of the simple tricks are fascinating and often difficult to figure out to the person watching. If you are interested in learning a magic trick, you first need to understand the basic rules. Remember, part of any magic trick is the way in which it is performed, meaning keeping mystery alive. However, if you do not capture the respect of the people by taking time to learn the trick, but also practice the trick until you have it down to a fine art, part of the effect and integrity are lost. For starters, even if the magic trick is simple, never tell anyone how you did it. Keeping your trick a secret is what makes it so exciting. Once you get your magic trick perfect, people will ask how you did it. At this point, you need to be polite but firm, stating something as, "Sorry, I never give out my secrets." Usually, people will back off or rib you a little bit on occasion. You might have someone that pushes the issue. If this happens, simply remind yourself that keeping the magic trick secret is part of the game. Another important rule associated with magic is to perform only when conditions are optimal. In other words, if you were to go to a party and someone were to mention that you do magic, choose only the tricks that you know you can do spontaneously. Although it might be tempting to start doing trick after trick, becoming bolder with each, know your limits. This way, you can impress people with just one or two magic tricks rather than bomb by a failed attempt at the third or fourth trick. The key, even with family and friends, is to leave people wanting to see more. As with anything, be humble, allowing the magic trick to speak for you rather than brag about how great you are, only to make a major mistake. If you are interested in building a career with magic, knowing when to stop and when to keep going is a fine line that needs to be learned. As stated, it would be far better to know one magic trick to perfection than to know 20 so-so. In time, you can expand on this one magic trick, learning a second and a third, also perfecting them. To become good with any magic, even the basics, you need to dedicate time to practice. Most magic tricks use sleight of hand, movements so precise and quick that the eye does not see them. The result to the audience is having the belief that some amazing thing just happened. However, to reach this point, even if you have just one magic trick, you will need to spend months honing your skill. To be successful with any magic trick, never compromise your standards. Magic and the misdirection of audiences. For hundreds of years, magicians have performed acts which are perceived to be impossible, causing the viewer to question how the act was performed. The viewer would generally know that actions performed by the magician will use some sort of trickery or illusion, but still viewers are usually unable to detect the change when it occurs, even when the trick is in full view of the audience. Sometimes when a magician performs a magic trick, he uses misdirection to trick the audience. The magician would usually draw your attention elsewhere while the trick is being performed to stop the audience seeing how it is done. Kuhn and Tatler, 2005, recorded eye fixations of the audience as a magician was performing a magic trick developed especially to see the effect of misdirection on the audience. It was a relatively simple trick, lasting only 15 seconds, where the magician was to drop a lighter and cigarette into his lap without the audience seeing, causing the audience to think the item had magically disappeared. First, the magician removes the cigarette from the packet and deliberately puts it in his mouth, the wrong way round. He then pretends to light the cigarette, which enhances the audience's interest in the mouth cigarette region. Both magician and the audience then realize the mistake, and the magician turns the cigarette around with his left hand while keeping his gaze fixed on his hand and cigarette. During this time, the magician drops the lighter into his lap, which is in his right hand. He then causes attention to go to the disappearance of the lighter by attempting to light the cigarette. When he is unable to light the cigarette, he looks to his right hand, snaps his fingers and waves his hand, pulling the audience's attention to his right hand. While the audience are looking at the disappearance of the lighter in the right hand, the magician drops the cigarette from a height of around 15 centimeters. He then turns his gaze to his left hand and opens it to show that the cigarette is also disappeared. The magician uses gaze direction to disguise his actions while performing the trick. Tatler and Kuhn, 2007. Generally, people have an urge to follow the gaze of others, in particular when there is pointing or another similar gesture involved that pulls the viewer's attention to a specific place. While dropping both the lighter and the cigarette from his hand, the magician's gaze is focused in the opposite hand to which the trick is being performed. This causes the audience's attention to also be focused on where the magician is looking, and makes them miss the lighter and cigarette being dropped. The dropping of the lighter was not very visible and could very easily be missed. However, the dropping of the cigarette was done in full view of the audience, from about 15 centimeters above the tabletop. But this action is also not usually detected, usually due to gaze misdirection. This shows that the magician successfully misdirected the audience's overt and covert attention at the correct time during the trick, right when the disappearance occurs. Surprisingly, when the audience were told that the magician was going to misdirect them while performing the trick, most people are still unable to stop themselves looking where the magician was looking and therefore misdetecting how the disappearance was performed. When in close interaction people tend to look at each other a lot, in a conversation setting, the average time people tend to look at each other is 75% of the time when listening, and 40% of the time when talking. Land and Tatler, 2009. As the audience are viewing the magic trick, their attention is focused on the magician who is performing the trick, and so have an urge to follow his gaze in whichever direction he is looking. The sharing of attention is a strong social cue whereby people appear to look in the direction they see others looking. When an event or fully visible item is not noticed by the audience, it is often called intentional blindness. Kuhn and Tatler, 2010. By the magician drawing the attention of the audience to his hand by snapping and waving it, he creates an area of high visual interest, which the audience are preoccupied with, by processing those actions of the magician. Because of this, they fail to notice the event occurring in the opposite hand, which is an area of low visual interest to the audience. Kuhn and Tatler, 2005, also considered visual factors which could cause the audience not to detect the change, such as blinking and the distance of the fixations of the audience when the drop is taking place. However, these do not seem to influence whether the drop was detected or not by the audience. Blinking when the drop took place did not influence whether the audience detected the change or not. There was also not much difference in where the audience were looking and whether they detected the drop or not. When the magician dropped the cigarette, most viewers were looking at the magician's face, his right hand or the space in between. In the first trial, only 2 people detected the drop, and 18 participants did not detect the drop. What is interesting, though, when the participants were shown the magician performing the trick again, all participants detected the cigarette being dropped. In the second viewing, most of the audience still look at the same place they were looking before, around the right hand and the magician's face. But this time, they are able to detect the drop. Only 3 participants looked where the cigarette was at the time of the dropping. This shows that the magician was successfully manipulating the audience's covert attention as well as overt attention in the first trial. But in the second viewing, he was less successful at manipulating the audience's covert attention, allowing the audience to see how the trick was performed in the second viewing. There is also a difference in whether the disappearance of the cigarette and the lighter is detected by the audience, depending on it being a live performance, when the trick is performed in front of the audience, or whether the audience watched the trick being performed on a screen. Cahun, Tatler, Findlay, and Cole, 2008, found that the audience are more likely to detect the disappearance of the cigarette when watching the trick being performed on a screen, rather than in a live performance. This shows that the audience have a closer connection to the magician while performing the trick live, and are more susceptible to following the magician's social cues and misdirection to stop them uncovering how the disappearance occurs. However, even when viewing the trick being performed on a screen, the audience still look in the same area, so they do follow the gaze of the magician. The study found no difference in the fixation of the audience and whether the disappearance was detected or not, but they did find a connection in the time taken to go from one fixation to the other. People who detected the disappearance are simply faster at moving their eyes to the left hand from which the cigarette disappeared. It is interesting how the magician manages to avoid this detection of the trick, even though it is fully visible. He pulls the overt and covert attention of the audience away from where the trick is being conducted, simply by his gaze direction. Misdirection usually works as the magician creates an area of high visual interest where most of the audience look, and performs the disappearance in an area of low visual interest. Eye direction plays an important part in misdirection. In another experiment by Cahun and Land, 2006, a magician performs a disappearing ball trick. The magician throws a ball in the air 3 times while keeping his gaze on the movement of the ball. As the ball goes in the air, his eye gaze also goes in that direction. On the 3rd throw, however, the ball seems to disappear while in the air. There are 2 conditions in this trick. Firstly, the magician's gaze also goes up when the ball is thrown for the 3rd time, and his gaze follows the movement which the ball is expected to take, and seems as though he is expecting the ball to come back down. In the second condition, the magician's gaze is fixed on his hand for the 3rd throw. This experiment shows that misdirection, using eye gaze, provides a huge impact on the results. 68% of the participants believed that the ball had left the screen in the air when the magician was looking up on the 3rd throw, but only 32% believed that the ball had disappeared in the air when the magician's gaze was fixed on his hand. This result shows that social cue and gaze direction plays an important role in misdirection in magic. However, the eye movements of the participants showed that on the 3rd throw, the area in which participants looked differed to where they looked for the first 2 throws. The eye fixations showed a pattern. Eye movements went from the magician's hand to his face, to the air, where the ball would be, and then back down to his hand. This would be repeated again for the 2nd throw, but for the 3rd throw, when the ball disappeared, participants' eye gaze was fixed around the area of the magician's face, or not far from his head. This fixation also occurred on those participants who were sure the ball had been thrown and had disappeared upwards. This shows that people perceived something had happened, even though they had not followed the gaze of the magician. This demonstrates that gaze direction matters and influences the audience to look where the magician looks. A magician misdirects his audience mainly through gaze direction. He looks in the opposite hand to which the disappearance is occurring, causing the gaze of the audience misdiscovering how the trick had been performed. People generally follow the gaze of others, look where they see someone else looking, and so the magician uses this strong social cue to influence his audience to also look where he looks. He creates an area of high visual interest for the viewer by waving and snapping his hand, and performs the trick in an area of low visual interest to the viewer. By doing this, he successfully misdirects the audience's attention and performs the trick without anyone discovering how the cigarette disappeared. Top 3 magic tips for performing free magic tricks. Magic is something that fascinates a lot of people and has the capability of transporting the spectators from an ordinary world into that of fantasy and charm. Many learn free magic tricks online. A lot of upcoming magicians aspire to become like seasoned veterans, like David Blaine, David Copperfield, Harry Houdini, and P.C. Sarkar. If you are going to do magic, then you have to believe that you have the capability to perform magic. It might sound silly or very obvious, but unless the magician has faith in himself or herself, he or she cannot expect the audience to believe in magic. Simply having the desire to perform magic and be a great magician is not enough. One should have the determination and the willingness to invest a lot of time and effort to practice performing tricks, so that one can master the art of making people believe in illusions. Learning magic tricks entails coming up with illusions without using any props and with the help of props as well. A recommendation here is to entertain the audience while doing magic tricks and to keep them absorbed. The job of a magician is equivalent to the job of an entertainer, meaning if the magician comes across as a bad entertainer with no zeal or enthusiasm, then no matter how great the magic trick is, no one will pay attention, and the magician would lose his audience. Tips are always effective and good in any situation, so these come in handy when one is mastering the art of performing magic. You can pick up tips from the likes of expert magicians like David Blaine and Chris Angel when you watch them perform firsthand. Of course, the actual art of performing magic tricks cannot be taught or contained in step-by-step detailed instructions, and one has to rely on his or her personality and wits to engage the audience and to retain their interest and attention. Even though there may be books on what to say before the magic trick, during the performance and after the performance, but one cannot simply blindly mouth these pre-written dialogues without really considering first whether they are apt or suitable for the audience and the situation. It is important to go with the flow. Thus, the magician can read tips and pick up pointers from there, but ultimately it takes both knowledge as well as street smartness to put up a great show. The top 3 magic tips for performing magic are: 1. Small talks. These are very important during the performance, especially if it is a live performance. Depending on the efforts put in by the magician to sell his magic trick to the audience, even an ordinary and basic magic trick can be transformed into an awe-inspiring and theatrical event. Dialogues are extremely important when it comes to performing magic tricks, and the perfect set of dialogues can assist the magician in his or her act. The body language of the magician is important too, and it is necessary to maintain eye contact to ensure that the audience is taking in every word spoken by the magician with great interest. As a magician, one can also employ humor to make the magic show a successful one. There is nothing like a generous sprinkling of humor into the magic show that gets people amused and relaxed. and it is best to perform magic in front of a relaxed but attentive audience. 2. Confidence. This is an essential element for every situation in life, and not just for performing magic. There is a whole lot of difference between the reactions garnered by a confident magician and that of a nervous wreck. In order to make people believe that one possesses magical powers, it is important to appear confident. However, the element of confidence should not be confused with the element of cockiness, because being confident is one thing and being cocky is another, and besides, no one likes a cocky magician. Even though you are pulling off a big magic trick, it is essential to appear confident and relaxed, as if it comes to you naturally. It is very natural that one may feel nervous before performing a magic trick, but a good magician always gets past the stage of nervousness and transforms into a confident magician once the show begins. The secret to being a confident magician is to practice repeatedly until you feel that the magic trick is a piece of cake. 3. The silent treatment. In order to become a good magician, one should always give the audience the silent treatment. What is the silent treatment? Well, it is the ideal thing to give to the audience once you finish performing the magic trick. You should just remain silent and simply stare at them, and it would drive those nuts because they would be extremely curious at that point of time with umpteen questions popping up in their minds. Just try it once and you will understand the power of the silent treatment. If silence is labelled as being golden, there is no better place to estimate its importance than during a magic show.